Hello and welcome to the Somatic Movement and Mindset podcast with me, Clinical Somatic Educator and founder of Total Somatics, Heidi Hadley. The Somatic Movement and Mindset podcast has been designed to help you gain a deeper understanding to how your mind and body work. You will learn about your amazing mind and body and why over time you can feel pain, recurring injuries and poor posture. Within this podcast, I will teach you why this doesn't have to be your future or the norm for you. Would you like to learn how to reduce pain, move freely, and gain a new lease of life? Let's get started. Hello and welcome back. Now today I'd like to bring back a friend of the show and a contributor to Total Somatics, and that is Rebekkah Finnigan. Now, before I bring Rebekkah on, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about her in case Rebekkah is new to you. So Rebekkah is a registered nutrition, health and wellness coach, and she loves helping people learn how to listen to their body and bring an awareness to around how they can feel their very best. Now, Rebekkah believes that instead of gaining more and more information and knowledge, it's really about taking that information and creating lifelong transformations and implementing it. That's what's more important than just gathering that information. And so how people fuel their body through food and through activity impacts everything about their lives. And that includes their health, their relationships, their career, happiness, and basically everything. So let me welcome to you this show, Rebekkah. So how are you, Rebekkah?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
No worries. And can you let us know where we're chatting from? Where are you in the world at this point?
At this point, I am northeast of Toronto, Canada.
Brilliant. So it's really lovely having Rebekkah here because she is a popular guest to the Total Somatics membership and also to the community. And lots of people have commented in the past, Rebekkah, about your lovely content. You've also been involved in the Menopause Summit, and I've had so much feedback from that. So people really enjoyed everything that you had to share there. So that's why I thought it was brilliant bringing you back. So as we're looking and really assessing what the year's been like, it's also planning what our new year will be like in a realistic and a kind of compassionate way, really. Because as we do approach the end of the year, many people have found that their old habits have crept back in and they can feel quite tough on themselves. So, just wanting to bring you in on this really is that some people have had quite a rough year. There's been a lot of stress, there's been a lot of trauma. And for some people, they've had a lot of sickness. It's almost hitting them 1 month and then they'd have a free month and then the next month it gets them again. So how would you say, looking at now and also intentionally for the new year and beyond, how can they create like a routine or a program to help kind of cleanse and also boost their immune system while also supporting them emotionally and helping with their well-being and doing it in a kind and compassionate way?
That's such a heavy question.
I know.
But a great one.
Let's start from the top.
Let's start really thick, but it's so true. It's like, why are we sick all the time, and why is there's a cycle of sickness, and is our immune system just taking a toll? And for a lot of us, as we are still seeking a lot of changes from the pandemic and just life in general that happens, we're into habits that are just not serving our body well. They're just not the healthiest habits, but we're just trying to get by. And I often try to explain it to my members and my clients and stuff in regards to this toxic glass, that when our toxic glass is flowing over and just, whether it's contributed to, outside environments, whether it has to do with, eating processed foods, whether it has to be our stress level and our hormones off and all of this and everything. When that toxic glass starts to overflow, our immune system kicks in and starts to try to attack it, which really is taxing on our immune system, right? And so then it makes us susceptible to diseases and sicknesses and all of this. And we don't always realize it because we're just trying to get by. And when we, boost up our vitamin C, or we start to, add in some supplements or whatever, all of that is great. And it's trying to support the immune system. But if the immune system is constantly working because your toxic glass is overflowing, this is what I really get by that term of, you know, getting into a routine, really being able to cleanse the body, starting fresh, especially as we, you know, approach this time of year. And then as the new year comes in, it's like, well, what can I do for my body in a routine and in a cleansing activity to reduce this, improve your immune system, and help you be healthier longer. So my advice would be to drain that toxic glass by really, you know, eliminating processed foods, by going back to the basics, by eating whole foods and being really mindful of that. But to even drill it down further is to just prioritize what you're putting in your body. At this time of year, it's often everything else is a priority. Holidays are a priority. My kids are a priority. My family's a priority. Christmas shopping, like whatever it is, becomes a priority. But yet, if you don't nourish yourself with these whole foods and, you know, be mindful of this toxic glass, it is going to creep up on you and continue to have to be sicker. So prioritize your nourishing yourself with foods, whole foods, healthy foods, and doing some things to cleanse your toxic glass and cleanse your body so it can strengthen your immune system. That would be my way to get started with that.
And would you say probably if it feels still quite overwhelmed because people have just had so much on their plate, would you say just like those little steps and maybe just changing what they drink first? So if they are keen on drinking soft drink, maybe changing that approach and then just getting that and then changing to something else, because it's kind of wanting to not tick it off, because that doesn't sound great, but do you know what I mean? It's literally having a bit of a structure. Would you say it's those tiny steps of where people are more likely to stick to something?
Oh, 100%, 100%. You know, one thing it's the foundation of my entire coaching practice is taking in all of this knowledge that we have. You know, we know a lot, and when we don't know something, we Google it and we get a plethora of information that then bombards more information. And it, for the most part, seems really simple. It's like, oh, drink more water. Oh, yeah, I can do that. And then we don't drink more water. Life happens and it gets too busy. We have too many things. An often analogy I use is, you know, somebody that wants to lose 100 pounds. It's like, oh, I'm going to lose 100 pounds. 100 pounds is a lot. 20 pounds is a lot. Right. And that the actions that it takes to do that is a lot. And so it's like, yeah, I'll do that tomorrow. And you go and you grab a bag of chips and you don't really do anything. It's too big. It doesn't seem realistic. And so exactly what you're saying is to be able to break it way, way down. What can you do? One thing, and be intentional about that one thing. Intention creates action, and action creates motivation. And we often want to be motivated. Right? I'm motivated to do that. Yeah, you're not going to wake up motivated and want to do that. If you drill it way back and you're just intentional about one thing, that creates the action, and the momentum of being in action creates motivation. And quite frankly, I'd love to even just drill it down even more, because we can set this intention, but then it is the effort. It's a level 10 effort to do this one intention that then will spiral and have the momentum. So if you give yourself permission to be like, yeah, you know what, I'm just going to focus on my water right now. I don't drink enough water. I hear that water is good for me. I'm just going to focus on that. And you will see that it'll give you the give you the action, right, to help you feel motivated to do more, because you're going to have clarity. You're going to have all these things, right? Whether it's water, whether it's sleeping. You know, being able to get enough sleep every single day and prioritize your sleep over everything else, especially at this time of year. You know, a lot of people are like, yeah, you know what, I'll catch up on my sleep on the weekend. It doesn't always work, right? So if you say, no, I'm going to make sure that I go to bed every day this week at 10 o'clock, no matter what, that's your one intention. And then have that effort to be like, okay, it's 5 to 10. I told myself I would go to bed at 10, not this, oh, at the end of my episode, or I'm just going to scroll for 5 more minutes on TikTok or whatever it is. You know, that level 10 effort to be like, no, I'm going to do this no matter what. Yeah, for sure.
And I thought that was really good when you were saying that, because it kind of ties in with the fact that, you know, when we start shifting like food and drink, that when we like, you know, that somatic awareness, so you feel internally there's a shift and a change. So I'm just taking the example again about soft drinks, but say with soft drinks, when people start cutting that out and maybe going for water, or if they think, oh, it's a bit bland, you just remember that you're palate actually changes, doesn't it, over that time? And it might be that you put a slice of lemon in, or, you know, do something like that just to add a little bit of flavor to that water. But there are reward centers in the brain, which we always kind of talk about reward centers and dopamine when we think of chocolate and, you know, the surge you get. But when somatically you feel maybe calmer, less jittery, because you're not having the sugar or you're not having the sweeteners, which are just as detrimental, aren't they, to our mental health as well, as well as the physical. But when you start feeling the rewards and somatically you think, I feel calmer, I feel I'm getting a better quality of sleep, that drives you to carry on then and think, actually, this is less about weight loss and it's actually about feeling healthier from within. And as you say, itself, you know, the body's amazing, isn't it? It just wants to repair and heal all the time. So when you give it the right fuel, a bit like you put diesel in an unleaded car, it's not going to work. It's the same thing with us, isn't it? If we put the right fuel in, we're going to trot along or motor along quite nice.
100%. That awareness can fuel it and keep you going, because now you're aware. You weren't aware before. You know, you can know a lot of things. Somebody could tell you, you know, I say, you know, we're overgrown teenagers. Try to tell a teenager to do something. They're like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. We're just overgrown teenagers. Somebody tells us something. It's like, but once we're aware of it on our own, we have that somatic, you know, response. We're aware. It's like, oh, I get it now. Okay. Yeah. I want more of that, you know, and then you continue doing it, you know? So yeah.
And I think also you say that it's true. We are overgrown like teenagers, but the difference is we've got harder habits, and sometimes our belief systems get a little bit more rigid, and it's literally having to challenge those belief systems, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yep. Overgrown, experienced adults is what I
yeah. I've got a sign at home, and of course this was a few years ago now, but it says something like, I'm 18 with 22 years of experience. It's I'm a bit older than that now, but you know, but I remember buying that at the time thinking, yeah, that was pretty cool. But I was going to say, I was thinking of like intentions and moving forward, you know, with the new year brings all these wonderful should I say resolutions and intentions. You know, everyone's like, I'm going to do this year, you know, and they're all full throttle. But then you get to about mid-January and they've all fallen off the wagon, and then they're all like, oh, forget it, I might try again in 6 months, or 2 weeks before we go on our summer holidays, or whatever it would be. And so what happens is those old habits that we were just talking about before, they take over again. So just to our listeners and to our viewers here, how would you say we could reframe our mindset and also that internal narrative, so that if we get those wobbly moments and we have some food and drink that, you know, we've been trying to avoid for a while, how can we go back to our intentions without feeling guilty and putting a lot of emotional load on us, thinking I'm a failure, you know, all those, again, expressions that come back into our head and the stories that then go off on a tangent with that label? What can we do?
You know what, it's a struggle that a lot of us have in regards to, you know, just wanting to feel good. And when we start to feel bad and we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to do 100 things in the new year. I'm going to work out and I'm going to eat better and I'm going to eat more salads and I'm going to go to sleep earlier and I'm going to run every day. And like, and I was going to say 2 weeks of that, let's say 5 days of that, like 3 days of that, like it's overwhelming. And then we start to tinker off and we don't do it. And then our inner mother comes out to be like, well, you said you were going to do it, right? And now you feel like crap. And so when you feel like crap, what do? You seek out things that make you feel good. And for many of us, that's treats, that's food, that's alcohol, that's smoking. These are a lot of habits that we have because they make us feel good. And so we seek them out. And then again, the inner mother, well, you shouldn't be smoking. Yeah. And then our teenager comes out, and then it's this whole dialogue inside of our brain, right? When we can start to step back and really just be curious instead of judgmental of ourselves, right? Don't be so judgmental of that inner mother or that inner critic that's there, right? There to protect you. That's a whole other conversation. But when we can just recognize it and step back and be like, that's interesting, you know, and curious, like, that's interesting. I'm sabotaging myself. Maybe I'm trying to do too much. I'm not Superwoman here. You know, what can I do if I'm wanting to feel good, right? You have this knowledge that when you seek out comfort food and when you seek out alcohol and these types of things, you're just wanting to feel good. It's like, well, what am I doing in my non-eating, non-drinking, smoking life that makes me feel good. And from my experience from all of my clients, they almost can never really answer it. They literally step back and go, well, I really like to crochet, but I never do it anymore. Or I really like to read and I just don't have time to read anymore. Or, you know, they start listing these things and they immediately have this, yeah, but I don't have time for that, or whatever, like this justification. It's like, well, what would it be like if you actually had time, if you made the time to do that, if you made the time to seek out the pleasurable things that you like, or even just get curious about what those things are? It's going to start to bring pleasure in your life that is going to not have you seek out the comfort food. It seemed kind of echoey. Did you see? Did I break up or did you hear me okay?
Yeah. I heard you clear.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Because I was going to say, and it really is, isn't it? When you mention that, it's about a whole lifestyle change and approach, isn't it? Because sometimes people do just get centered on that. And it's interesting you say that, because when I sometimes chat to people and they go, oh, so do you drink coffee? I go, no. Do you have alcohol? No. And I go, I don't have gluten. No, just because I've got fructose malabsorption, so I have to kind of avoid anything that's got like fructans is with gluten. So, and then they go, well, what do you like? As if like I've got this really boring life, you know. Things going on. But it's interesting when you said that. I was like, yeah, you know, I mean, my vice is chocolate. Anyone that knows me, that's the one I have to work on. So we've all got our own vice, haven't we? But the reality is, when people hear that, I'm like, there is more to somebody's life than what they eat and what they drink. You can actually pursue so many exciting things away from what you take in, you know, on a food wise. And that was really interesting because it's literally creating a lifestyle where we get that dopamine elsewhere. And I was going to say, Rebekkah, recently, just talking to different people, it's about sometimes we've lost that community and that connection with people. And when people are talking about food and when talking about drink, it's like it's sometimes just that self-soothing technique that's been created, whereas when we connect in a community, or you know, there's just, it's a greater spreading around of ourselves in a healthy way, you know, that's actually really rewarding, and that will create towards a good mental well-being as well. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%, 100%. And when you can start to be aware of that, that's what you thrive on, and it's not connected to, because there's a lot of social expectations or norm to be like the social event has to be at a bar or a party or out to dinner or whatever, that it is revolved around food and drink. But it's like, what about if that sense of community, you know, did something else together? You know, the first one that came to mind is like the running room or like a running club, but it doesn't have to be an exercise thing either. It could be pottery. It could be anything that's involved in the community. You know, I recently downloaded this app that helps blind people, and I just subscribed to it. And so when a blind person needs help seeing something, needs a seeing person, right? It's this whole community that they call you. It's incredibly rewarding, right? And it just makes me feel good, right? And whether that is, you know, a hobby I have, no, it's not, because I don't call that often, but I subscribe to something that makes me feel good. That's different than a cookie, right? Or what, like I seek out these things that make me feel happy and part of a community, or brings me a sense of pleasure, gives me a sense of purpose, you know, outside of food and drinks and all of that.
Yeah, and it's like I've been in podcasts recently talking about how like volunteering of your time. So it doesn't have to be on a monetary side of things, but you know, even if it's like a soup kitchen, or you know, go into a school if you know those people well, and to listen to the children like in a reading class setting, that sort of thing where there's that interaction. That's where we can also bring it up, because you know, if we go back, we were tribal, we were in groups and communities, but we've become much more isolated. And it's seeking out these things now, isn't it? Where if we could, you know, it could be food, it could be drink, it could be something materially that you think that's going to bring you that happiness. But it comes back to that community and connection, doesn't it? So, I mean, that could be something that as we're looking at a new year, how could we bring that into our focus for the new year? Because it's all again about kindness and compassion, really, isn't it? So,
Well,
yeah.
and really even just, tapping into that curious thing about you as an individual. Like I'm a very introverted person, and an introverted person might, when somebody says, oh, volunteering, get in the community, they might be, oh, that's too much. But it's you don't know until you try. It's that experimental, that curiosity of what it is that's going to bring you pleasure. What is it, and what part of it? And I'll use another person example to where I used to be very creative in my younger years. And so I thought, oh, well, maybe again, with that curiosity hat, and I'm like, well, maybe I'm missing some sort of creativity. And so I signed up for these courses and I learned all this new creative stuff. And as much as I liked it, it was outside my comfort zone. I didn't really click with the people there. It triggered my introvertedness or whatever. And so again, with curiosity, I step back and be like, okay, that wasn't it, but what did I like about it? What was there any part of it I wanted? That when we cannot be judgmental and be like, well, that didn't work for me, that was a losing case. It's like, no, what did work? And I was able to take out the pieces, and I've started another hobby that is lighting me up because I experienced that. So being less judgmental on yourself, more curious about the things that can bring you pleasure, are really going to help you stay away from things that are unhealthy and maybe going to take you down a road that isn't going to make you feel your best.
Yeah, it's interesting to say that, Rebekkah, because it's kind of getting to know yourself again, because at different eras and different times in our life, we kind of think we still need what it was from years ago, but we do evolve, we do change. And then it's like you say, it's that curiosity to go, well, I tried that probably like 20 years ago, I might have liked that, but actually let me try something else, because this is a different point in my life. And it is interesting, isn't it? You constantly getting to know yourself, and that's what opens other parts of your brain to become again aware of situations. So and then all the life experience that you gain over the years, you don't know how that's going to help other people when you're in a new setting. So it's what you're giving in that way as well. It's quite interesting. Sorry, we go off on a tangent there, but this is what happens.
Yeah, but it's so true. And even if we were to bring it back to just the idea of this time of year and things that we need to do to stay on a healthy track, it does help our immune system. It does help our habits. It helps us become aware of what's best for us when we can step back and make sure that we are enjoying what we're doing, because there's a lot of stuff that we have to do. We have responsibilities, we have families, we have work, we have things that we have to do. But is there a balance of things that you enjoy compared to the things that you have to do, right? And what can you do to prioritize that so that there is more of this balance, so that you're not seeking out a quick fix of something unhealthy, which is typically what happens,
Yeah. It's true. And sometimes that quick fix can happen because, for some people, they're going to be really happy to see the end of this year because they would have had quite a lot of stuff that they would have had to endure. And so with those people that are still carrying a lot of worry and a lot of just heaviness and concern from this year, how can they create a healthy lifestyle again, which is going to, like we mentioned before, is going to support them emotionally and mentally whilst they're still recovering from maybe a pretty turbulent year? And really looking at how to support them with their energy levels, with their strength, with their willpower, when they might be pretty empty inside, running on empty, or haven't got a lot of capacity within their nervous system to take on a lot, and possibly again would find it quite tricky at this point for different reasons to kind of go out into the community and do volunteering or whatever it is. What can they do just to take care of themselves at this point in their life?
Yeah. And that is, it can seem a lot harder than it really is. And when we first started talking about, breaking things down to like one thing, when things are heavy like that, and we're struggling to even just get out, and the thought of going out and doing something you enjoy is just too much. We have these filters in our head, and our filter is just trying to get by, and whether that is judgment, whether that is negativity, whatever that is, that filter is open, that's gonna what we see all the time. And when we are in that state and we just want to get out of it, a very, very, very good practice, I know you're going to love this one, right, is a gratitude practice. And a gratitude practice is going to start to open up that filter to something else. And it's one thing that you could do, right? And even when you are struggling mentally and you're struggling physically and all that stuff, that effort for that one intention to be like, okay, I'm just going to do a gratitude practice. And I'm not talking, like, I have people that I help with a gratitude practice that are positive people. And initially they're like, well, Rebekkah, I'm grateful for a lot of things, right? And they're like, every night I say, you know, gratitude in my head, and I'm a positive person. It's not suggesting that you're not a positive person, but we're all very sensual creatures, and we can think something in our head, and that's great, but not as much as when you write something down, you physically have a pen in hand, you read it with your eyeballs, right? You're thinking, you're slowing down your thought process, and you're practicing sensually by writing things down that you're grateful for. This helps you start to practice reframing and opening up that filter to gratitude and to a positive, I don't want to say a positive, but just a different way of seeing things that is going to help you get into action, help you feel stronger, and help you, it will help your immune system. You know, gratitude changes you on a cellular level, and you'll be able to begin to move forward with more energy, all based on a gratitude practice. Like, if that is one thing, well, the first thing I would tell people is to focus on their sleep. And the second one I would say would be like a gratitude practice, because, you know, being able to practice that is literally life-changing.
Yeah. And I'll probably add to that as well, because in recent podcasts, I've mentioned again about gratitude and writing it down, because it's actually the writing down process, which is really embeds it again, doesn't it? They always say, you know, we're all into this tech world now, but it's actually the writing it down. And I also mentioned in a podcast recently about writing, you know, 2 or 3 little gratitude notes to somebody else to show how, you know, why you're grateful for them and how they've been of a real value in your life. So, you know, it's really building that. But I thought I'd just add on to that, because if you've got somebody that's really limited to what they can do at this point, I again work a lot within the membership on the brain and heart, that coherence. And so it's like cognitively we can create that gratitude, but then can we visualize that we're feeling that hitting into our heart and then actually feeling it? So if we're thinking about something of great gratitude, what would that feel like? To actually, you know, it's to really bring it very somatic. So feeling that tingling sensation of that happiness about it. So it's really bringing a sensation and awareness back into our body, because it really is like, and it's exactly what you were then saying, is because your heart is like that seat of motivation. It's that drives you to action. If that's to write your gratitude note, or to write to somebody else, or just to be grateful again, to wake up and have another day. And then just to actually feel that somatically, and that's what really drives us, doesn't it?
When you feel good, you want to continue to feel good, so you're going to continue to do the practice that made you feel good, right? And that's exactly what you're talking about. When you can connect it below the neck, right? We get all wrapped up in our heads so often, and it's like, if we can push it down and be like, wow, that feels good, I want to do more of that, that feels good. But that comes from awareness, and you have to practice it for, like, you have to start to do it. And it's a great example to visualize that you can think of great things in your head, but you're still all up in your head. You gotta get it down into the body to be like, oh, okay, that's where the awareness kicks in.
And then I think that's where it drives that like emotional empathy as well, because you really feel it, don't you? And you want to kind of do so much more, or support, or, you know, just, or more emotional empathy for yourself to go, yes, we can get through this. Like you'd say to a good friend, we can get through this, you know, and that's how you can just manage day by day with those new routines as well. So, I was going to ask, I know it feels like we're jumping back again, but just wanting to bring this point in because of the time of the year, and it kind of depends on seasonal holidays. You know, it depends on when people are picking this episode up. But, you know, with stress comes comfort eating, and there's smoking, and there's drinking, and other things that people do. And also, you know, again, different events can trigger people to go to that comfort eating, if it's being with family or friends, that sometimes can draw controversial subjects out or whatever's going on. There's always a dynamic that kicks off. So if people are watching or listening to this today and they resonate with this scenario of comfort eating when they're triggered in those situations, again, what would you suggest when it looks at their mindset and their approach? How can we manage comfort eating?
How can we manage comfort eating? Well, and especially if you're, surrounded by people that are causing you stress, or, you're wanting to result in comfort eating. Again, it has to do a lot with the pleasure, that if you're not doing things outside of that holiday or spending time with them, you're going to seek pleasure in comfort eating. One of the things I would love to stress about is this idea, especially at this time and any season, right? We often prioritize everybody else besides us. Many of us do, right? And especially a lot of women, we prioritize, our kids, work, our families, everybody else, and we can come second. And when we are doing that, we are going to seek comfort in food or things that we can control, right? Because we can't always control if we're prioritizing everybody else. It's starting to recognize that, wow, when I prioritize myself, right? I make myself happy. I ask myself, what is best for me right now? Yes, I might have to do this obligation or this responsibility, but what would be best for me in that scenario? You're going to start to seek out comfort food and other things like that less, because you're prioritizing yourself. Many of my clients will think that they're being selfish, and I think I use that scenario, they say the airplane, put the mask on first before you get your kids. And then it's like, okay, yeah, but really, if we were on the airplane and it was going down, I can hold my breath. Right? We think, oh, I can hold my breath. I'll put it on I'm going to save my kid. I'm going to save whoever's next to me. Like, I can hold my breath. But really, it's the whole plane is your whole family. Everybody you love is filled with this plane. You can't possibly hold your breath. For you to put everybody's mask on, you would die. This is our day-to-day life. And this is why we seek comfort food and why we seek other habits that maybe are unhealthy, because we're not prioritizing, we're not looking after ourselves. So when we give ourselves permission to actually take the 2 seconds, it would take 2 seconds to put a mask on yourself, and you would have the energy and you would have the power to be able to help everybody around you. This is going to stop all of those bad habits. And as simple as that sounds, by just doing this, that is how simple it is to put yourself first, whether that is how you eat, whether that is the time that you need alone time, whether that needs time that you are going for a walk or you're going to yoga or whatever it is that we think that we don't spend time to. When you prioritize that and you put that first, it naturally will start to curb your desire for comfort food, for alcohol, for these things that kind of give you that quick dopamine, because you're already happier over here. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
It does, yeah. And it's like a full recalibration, really, isn't it? That because it takes us back to what we were talking about before, that it would just become that cycle of just, it is an addiction, really, isn't it? So it's breaking it and just thinking, again, it's that somatic awareness, thinking, oh, hang on, I think I can feel that addictive kind of drawing me to have the chocolate or whatever it is. And let me stop, let me go off and have that walk around the block, especially if there's something that's happened. Because I was talking to somebody recently and she said she's trialed this on herself. And she said when she gets this urge for chocolate, it's about 20 minutes. I've got to say, my urge goes on for a lot longer than 20 minutes. Sometimes, sometimes I see things and they kind of morph into a giant chocolate bar. So I think that might tell me a bit about my addiction. So I was quite impressed that hers is only 20 minutes. But the reality is it's finding things to, again, occupy your mind, because it is an addiction, isn't it? And
Yeah.
I have huge empathy for smokers and drinkers and that, because I can literally go, that looks a bit like a galaxy bar. But that's the reality, is it's like just switching your mindset and thinking, focus on something else, go for that walk, move your body, and that will again move everything around and just shift the state of your nervous system and your mindset and your focus.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes too, depending on what it is, right? But sometimes too, it's giving ourselves permission to have some chocolate. You're not going to
I don't
die.
need encouragement, Rebekkah. I
Yeah.
don't need it. Don't
But
be an
sometimes
enabler.
it is. And when we feel less rebellious, right? And
Yeah.
then we have the intention, it's like, okay, I'm going to do this, but my intention, remember, we're thinking of that one intention. But tomorrow, you know what? My one intention is that I'm not going to have chocolate tomorrow, or I'm not going to have sugar, or I'm not going to, like, whatever. And not restricted. I'm kind of being very simplistic now when it comes to picking like one thing to work on. But when we put too much pressure on ourselves to be like, you know, I mean, if you're craving something for 20 minutes, an hour or whatever, yes, that curiosity step out of like, okay, what can I have instead? Okay, piece of dark chocolate, or, you know, like, I don't know, you know, but not being so strict on it, but depending on what it is, you know. So
Right, yeah, it is, yeah.
yeah.
I was going to say, because we've got, you know, there's lots of events, depends on when people are picking this up, but when this has gone out, we've got Thanksgiving that's very close, we've got Christmas and New Year. This is around 2023, but you might be watching this afterwards. So it's any seasonal holidays really. How can people be sensible but realistic with their intentions and their approaches during this time? Because again, people want to get together and they want to have a memorable time and that sort of thing. And you don't want to look like the party pooper, really, do you? You know, that sort of thing. But what can people do to adopt the principles of that healthy, mindful eating and again that somatic awareness of taking care of their body during these occasions?
Yeah. You know what, as you know, I want to hang on or you know, highlight where you're saying, oh, I don't want to be that party pooper. And sometimes it's making sure that you're communicating, you know, what's going on with you. You know, sometimes when we, you know, think we're on a diet, or we're watching our sugar, or we're not drinking anymore, and then we go into these social situations and it seems so dramatic to be like, oh, everybody's going to know I'm not drinking, and you know, and we have this judgment on that. You know, it's a big downer, where there's this expectation that everybody else is going to judge you, as opposed to if you were just vulnerable with one person and said, yeah, you know what, I'm just not going to eat any sugar today, or I'm not going to be drinking, you know, where you're really prioritizing yourself and you're communicating what's important to you. It takes a lot of the pressure off of yourself to think that you've got to manage it all, that you have to be like, you know, doing what everybody else is doing, like the peer pressure of doing that all, you know. You know, I really think of being able to go from a mindset of like a diet, or I can't have, or restricted, or I have to, you know, mindset, as opposed to, no, this is the lifestyle I want. I want to be happier. I want to be healthier. I want to, you know, have energy. And it's the mindset that this is the life that I want. It's not temporary. And when we have this diet mentality, or we have this, you know, the best thing I can think of is like, I should do this, or I shouldn't do like this either or type of mentality. You know, if we can start to practice that lifestyle, this is my lifestyle, this is what's best for me, you know, and not the, oh, I'll be better in January, or I'll be better, you know, when the holiday's over, or oh, you know what, I'll just party this party and I'll be better next weekend. You know, why make those agreements with yourself? Why make those expectations? Be like, I'll just be better now. And if you do end up having too many glasses of wine at a party or whatever, to be like, okay, don't beat yourself up about it, and just pick back up right away. Not like, oh, I'll be better in January, or I'll be better next week, or whatever. No, I'll be better right now.
Yeah, and it's true. And you made a really good point, which I thought was interesting, about the peer pressure, because in some social circles you can be out, and you know, this is just a thought if anyone's bearing this in mind, but because I don't drink alcohol, it's purely because the yeast doesn't agree with my gut, and there's like family history of like Crohn's disease, colitis, bowel cancer, and so I've got fructose malabsorption, and the gastroenterologist said to me like 12, 13 years ago that people that don't manage that fructose intolerance, it can switch the gene and cause a lot of inflammatory bowel issues. So for me, I'm really careful about fructose and yeast, because again, the candida aspect, which is again linked in with all of that. And so that's why for me, it's, I look and I think I actually feel better. I really feel better when I don't touch yeast products or alcohol. And then, yeah, I don't have, I've got my green tea here, but I don't usually have caffeine because again, it kind of creates like palpitations. And so there's a lot of sensitivity in there. So when people say something to me, I'll go, look, I like wine, but it just doesn't like me. And I feel better without it. And they go, oh, all right then, because they go, have you got a problem with it? I go, no. I always find it really funny. I go, no, I say it's just, it suits my gut better. And I go, really, it's about my gut health, because if my gut's happy, my headspace is happy, and then I can operate and work well and just function well and sleep well. And they go, okay. And that's it. And then you sometimes find they ask more questions then of, well, I've had gut issues, or yeah, I've wondered why I get that bloating, or I wonder why after I've had a few wines, I'm awake in the night and I'm really thirsty and I can't get back off to sleep. And what it ends up being is like they then start to become more somatically aware of what that habit is and how that's actually dictating after the event. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. And it's so true. And that's kind of what I mean about that. You know, we expect that everybody's going to be judgmental and that you want to do things a certain way, but then the peer pressure comes in and you're like, oh, I don't know. And it's this internal struggle where it's like, if you just shared, because most people, they either don't really care, oh, okay, whatever, or they'll ask questions. And we have this expectation that that's going to be this big deal. When really it's like, just tell them, yeah, you know what? It does. I love that. You know, I like it. It doesn't like me.
Yeah.
That's it. You know, it doesn't have to be a big story, or, you know, sometimes people, you know, make up little white lies or whatever. And it's just not necessary. Like nobody really cares. And so, you know, you go into that and, you know, and you want to approach this lifestyle, or really you're practicing new habits that aren't really secure yet, right? Is saying that, you know what, I'm working on some new habits and, you know, I'm practicing right now, so I'm not going to do X, Y, Z, whatever it is. Like, just being honest and just being transparent and vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know,
and it is, and I like the word vulnerable, because when you do that, it actually opens up more conversations.
yeah,
It
100%.
really does. And then you learn so much more from each other. Yeah.
Yep. The more we communicate, you know, what's really going on with us, and not just thinking that somebody's going to care beyond that they really do, or that they can already read your mind. You know, it's like, no, it doesn't take a lot to be able to just share, you know, this is what's going on with me.
Yeah.
You know,
That's brilliant. Now, I was going to say, as we come towards a close, what 5 takeaway points would you like to share with everyone?
5 takeaway points. Well, you know, I really, and I, you know, my, any of my members or clients that are going to watch this, you know, they'll be like, oh yeah, that's a Rebekkah-ism. And is this, you know, stepping back and being curious and not being so judgmental. We are judgmental creatures, and we are, right? And oftentimes we can't control our first thought, but we can start to practice and control our second thought. You know, we're experienced adults. We might have that initial, oh, I shouldn't do that, or whatever it is, that judgment that comes in, and then be like, oh, no. Stepping back and being curious and being like, oh no, I am gonna try this. Or, you know, being more gentle with ourselves and just being more accepting and curious. So less judgment, more curious. That would be one for sure. I think another one would be in regards to, I think we talked a bit about, and it reminds me a lot, and I would love to have this as we go through this season, this idea of, oh, well, I guess I'll just be better in January, or, oh, I fell off the wagon, or whatever, I guess I'll be better next week. And giving yourself permission to recognize it in that moment and be like, oh, you know what, I'm just going to be better now. Period. You know, I mean, go ahead, eat the cookie, but catch yourself and don't eat 5. As opposed to, well, I guess I'll be better next week. This is where it makes the roller coaster really, really hard to get off of, because it's so steep, as opposed to, oh, look, I've recognized, and it's more of a little wave. It's easier to get off and on a little wave than this, roller coaster. So really, enjoy. Life is to be enjoyed, right? But don't enjoy it so much to make it that much difficult and be like, fix it in January.
Yeah.
So that would be another one. Definitely a gratitude practice would be one, would be my third little takeaway. If you were to, when I talk about, intention creates action and action creates motivation. If you were to set an intention and a practice or something to work on during this whole holiday season, is a gratitude practice, and not just being positive in your head and not just being grateful that you got, Taylor Swift tickets or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like whatever it is that you wanted, you got, whatever you want. And no, to write it down, just like you said, write it down, pen to paper, sensual, getting it out of your head, into your body, really feeling into it, starting to practice reframing so that you can reframe at any given moment when something is happening and be like, oh, that's the positive intent of something that might be really crappy that's happening. Can help you, again, talking about that roller coaster, prevent you from having really, really low lows and high highs, keeping you a little bit more stable emotionally, as well as physically. Mm-hmm. That would be my third one. My fourth one would be, again, I say intention, right? And we, it's like, oh, I'm going to be intentional about one thing, but it takes effort to be intentional. And sometimes we just think, intention, I'm strong on intention. It's way hard. It's impossible to be motivated all the time, right? But to even be intentional for one thing, you have to have that effort. So that level 10 effort or 100% effort, be like, okay, I'm in it to do this one thing. I am going to drink more water today. And when it's 6 o'clock and you only drink one glass of water, again, my number one, no judgment, be like, that's interesting. What got in my way today that I only drank one glass of water? I'm going to amp up my effort with my one intention I'm going to do today. And I'm going to chug a glass of water right now. Yeah. I preach this stuff, and there are many a night at 8 o'clock, I'm sucking back a glass of water just to get it in me, so no judgment. Life happens. Things get in the way. When we can start to release the things that get in our way and not be bogged down by it and be like, oh, that's interesting. That got in my way. I'm going to be more aware of that tomorrow and not let that be in my way, Yeah. And my last one would be, especially when you were talking about our immune system and, depending on where you are in the world and the seasons of illness, right? Is really practicing draining that toxic glass and being able to strengthen our immune system by, being mindful of whole foods. I do a whole foods reset cleanse. My members and my clients do them at least 3 times a year. Getting to a practice to be able to do that and this kind of reset and bring this glass down will just do wonders for your immune system.
It's absolutely brilliant. And I think that's so nice because you've kind of brought in the mindset and then weaved in the action plans itself, isn't it? And do you know, one thing that jumped out from when you were saying all that is throwing away that perfectionism and that rigid thinking. It's like, this is the set time that we eat and we do this and this, that and the other. Whereas the reality is that's actually in that whole perfectionism, black and white rigidity. And although it's good to have a structure, it's actually nice to actually explore, isn't it? Sometimes, different foods, or maybe if you're doing a bit of a fasting, just maybe delay it by an extra hour or two, just to see if people are fasting, how their body will fare that way. Does that make sense? So it's kind of, again, getting rid of that perfectionism and that rigid black and white thinking. And again, because that's complete opposite to curiosity, isn't it? And the curiosity is really crucial. And that keeps using the front part of our brain. When we're curious, we're using the prefrontal cortex. Yeah.
Being curious, being experimentative, and recognizing that, again, as experienced adults, we have so much knowledge, and a large portion of it is just bombarded information that still is glued in there. And I'll use an example of one of my members recently. We're in the middle of doing this intensive and we're talking about breakfast, and she's like, oh, I'm not really good at breakfast. You know, I try really hard. And she has this idea of breakfast. And she's like, you know, every morning I have a lemon water, and then I have collagen with some dandelion, and then I have athletic greens, and I have a whole greens drink. And I just don't have breakfast. And I'm like, that is breakfast, you know? And she's like, what? You know, it is. She's got her green, she's got her healthy fat, she's got her collagen, she's got the protein, right? It's very high in calories. That is her breakfast. But in her mind, she's got, well, I've got to have, she didn't say that she needs bacon and eggs, but we often have this like idea of what breakfast is, but yet she's having her own breakfast that is giving her the energy and giving her the calorie intake, you know, the protein, the healthy fats and fibers to be able to start her day. But she thought it was different. So it's being experimented and being open-minded to being like, oh, that's interesting. Look, I'm having this right now. It's satiating me and it's giving me the energy to start my day. That's breakfast, no matter what that looks like. You know,
and it's true, because it's that somatic awareness again, isn't it, that you could have a big fry up in the morning, but then you feel really and you can't do anything for the rest of the day. And you think, if it depends on your job, if it's a very physical job, you want to get your proteins, your fats, you want to get all that goodness in, but maybe it is in a different form, like more of a liquid approach, because it's less energy to break that down, and you can use more energy for the physical work that you're about to do, for instance. So it is a shift of your mindset, isn't it? Thinking it's got to be sitting down with a knife and fork and eating away. It's the old mindset, really.
Exactly. And being curious about it. You know, a lot of times it's a mirror. Our resistance to things can be a mirror in a solution, a mirror in what we truly desire. So when we can have that curious, and why am I being so resistant? Why is this not working? You know, we're resisting breakfast or whatever it is, and being like, oh, okay, be open up to other information. But sometimes we just are in a I don't want to say a fight mode, but it's just kind of, that's just where we are, because that's the knowledge that we have. But it's like, well, really, maybe that doesn't work for me. You know,
and it is, isn't it? And it's even listening to people listening to this or watching this today, it's maybe challenging their narrative, or maybe going, don't have to feel so hard on myself, because that's what I've been doing. But other people have told me that that's actually not a proper meal, you know, because everybody's become an expert now, haven't they? Because they've got Google at their fingertips. They're all experts now. And it's like, you know, there are millions or billions of people in the world, and we've all got different bodies, and we've all got different activities and lives and genetics and things. So it's literally finding what resonates with you, what makes you feel energetically well within, what works with your gut health, how that translates into your emotions and your inflammation. And that will fluctuate from one person to another, but it also fluctuates from different periods of time, doesn't it? Again, we talked about that earlier, if it's in other areas as well, but we're constantly evolving and shifting and changing, and it's still listening and thinking, does this lifestyle still serve me well, or do I need a little bit more protein at the moment? Or if it's sort of going into a menopausal time, do I need to start looking at how I support myself in different ways here? So it's kind of still being attuned throughout to your body, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. And being open-minded to it, and not being like, oh, I could do this in my 20s. That's great. You knew something that worked for you in your 20s, and now let's figure out what works for you in your 40s or your 50s, you know, and having that experiment, and maybe you start with what worked then, and then being okay with the fact that it doesn't. You know, I think of running, you know, people that are like, oh, I used to be a runner. Maybe you're not now. Maybe you like yoga, or, you know, like being open-minded to whatever could be shifting in your pleasure. Again, getting into that pleasure thing, you know, making things enjoyable. When things feel good, when you're happy, you're going to do more of it.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. Well, it's absolutely been brilliant to have you here today, Rebekkah. But obviously, people want to know more about where they can find out more about you. So can you let us know where they can find out more about you? And of course, everything you're going to mention, I'll put in the show notes anyway. But if you can share that with us, that'd be awesome.
For sure. So, I mean, my coaching practice is called Energy and Motion. So Energy and Motion Coach. is where you find me on Instagram and on Facebook. I am on TikTok now, which is exciting. So I'm new at it, but I still enjoy it and do lots of, information and stuff on there, which is just under my name, Rebekkah Finnigan. My website is energyemotioncoach.com. So that's easy to find. And, they can always contact me. I have, 5 simple tips to healthy living. So I can, add on to those healthy tips that they can have and kind of be involved in my world. But that's where you can find me. That's where you can stalk me and find out more about what I do and how I serve.
And also how they can see what a lovely life you've got, in the sense that you really do practice what you preach, because of course you are stationary at the moment here in Canada, but then you'll be off on your travels again. So again, embracing that excited life. So, I mean, we were sharing before, but obviously it depends on everyone's kind of following you. But can you just share a little bit about your adventures that you have?
Yes. Well, and and it kind of ties in, for the longest time. I mean, I was a corporate woman. I lived in the corporate world, and I traveled a lot when it came to my corporate life, and I was a very stressed out, corporate woman. And, on my journey to, turning my hobby into my career, which is what I do now as a coach, as a health coach, and helping people become aware, it's been my own journey to become aware of what lights me up and the pleasures that I have. And I, a couple of years ago through COVID, I was really, really embracing the fact that I thrive. And here I'll even show, like, I thrive being surrounded by beauty. And so I had this intention to be able to go out of my way, to have a level 100 effort when it came to making sure that I was surrounded by beauty and that I felt a sense of home and had this beauty surrounded around me. So through COVID, my husband built us a Sprinter van so that we could travel and be surrounded by beauty whenever we wanted. And, it started with that. I saw this picture of this place and I was like, oh my God, I wonder what country that is. And my husband's like, that is like 2 hours away from where we live. I'm like, what? I literally thought that it was like Switzerland, or I don't know where I thought it was. And it was 2 hours away. And I'm like, how do we live here and we don't experience that? That is beautiful. And so, the last couple of years, we started to travel around in our Sprinter van and be surrounded in beauty. And that's, we're planning our next trip to be able to do that. And life's too short, and it brings me such joy and it brings me such pleasure, right? That it feeds everything about me, so that I show up differently and I make healthy choices because I prioritize that and I make it work. Now that might be extreme for some people, and maybe the careers that they have or the responsibilities that they have, but it still is all workable. It's just being experimented, being curious on how you can make that work. It could just be flowers around if you wanted beauty around you. It could be, doesn't have to necessarily be a Sprinter van, but
Yeah.
But yeah,
it is fantastic. No, it's fantastic though. And it's a way of recharging then, because when you're recharged, you can give so much more to people as well, can't you?
100%, 100%,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, Rebekah, you and I were chatting before, and it was just like an idea and things like that. But in the future, I'd love to come over to North America and hold like a retreat and do things like that. So if you're keen, obviously there's nothing set in stone for dates or anything, but anyone that's listening to this, anyone knows Rebekah or knows me, if it's something that it feels like it floats your boat and you'd be interested, let me know, because there's also somebody else that we've been talking, Melanie Cool, and we were all thinking how we could get together and do some sort of form of a retreat, be like a women's wellbeing type of retreat. If you're keen,
that'd be
Rebekah,
great.
it'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
Yes.
I'll be brilliant. And you can
I'm
come in
in.
your Sprinter van. You can come in your Sprinter van and we can have a good look around.
Yes.
So it'd be absolutely brilliant. So yeah, so that's what I'm saying is it's just up there as an idea at the moment, but it's we were talking about community connection. It's so important bringing everybody together. So yeah, that's out there. So if you're keen, just let us know and we can look at organizing something in the future.
We'll manifest that. I think it's great. I would love to hear feedback on it and be a part of it 100%. That would be beautiful. I would be surrounded by beauty and would love to share and participate. It's a great idea.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Rebekkah. I think I've taken plenty of your time today. So thank you for sharing time with me, and for everybody listening and watching this today. As always, it's always an absolute honor to have you here. So thank you so much for all your time.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for spending time with us today. And let us know in the comments below, if you're watching this on the Total Somatics YouTube channel, what did you feel you resonated with Rebekkah here? What were your takeaway points? Because we love to hear from you. As always, if this episode really hit you and also resonates with you and somebody else that you're thinking of, please share it, because that's what Total Somatics is all about, is sharing this knowledge and also bringing people like Rebekkah in to, again, just get us to challenge some of our belief systems and bring in all these new focuses and intentions into our life. So I'm going to love you and leave you. And I'm sure Rebekkah also sends her love and best wishes too. So from the two of us, all our kisses and our hugs through the airways to you. And until next time, all my love and, well, all our love and best wishes. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for joining me today. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and also forward this on to somebody you know will benefit. To learn more about pain relief, plus how to improve your health and well-being, go to totalsomatics.com. Until next time, take care.